Hi, parents and guardians of fifth grade students. We're very happy that you are joining us for this informative session on fifth grade placement for your students, our students, from fifth grade to sixth grade. With me tonight are elementary and middle school supervisors as we are working together on this placement process.
Our goal is to ensure that every child has the best education.
And that all starts with placement. Each child is placed in a class in which they would be most successful.
Ms. Grimaldi and Mr. Stokes, thank you for speaking with us today. So what exactly is placement criteria?
So placement criteria are a set of data points that help us guide which courses students should be placed into in terms of math and English language arts.
So what math courses are offered in sixth grade and what's the difference between them?
So we offer 2 math courses in 6th grade. Students can take Math 6, which is our 6th grade standards-based class, or they can take Pre-Algebra 6, which is a course that is designed with 7th and 8th grade standards in order to prepare our students for Algebra 1. The most important difference between the 2 classes is that our Pre-Algebra 6 students are expected to skip over all of 6th grade math content and really interact with that rigorous content that's 7th and 8th grade standards. The goal is to prepare them for Algebra 1, whereas our Math 6 students are going to learn our 6th grade standards.
Thank you. Mr. Stokes, how is placement decided for a student moving from 5th to 6th grade?
Placement is decided on a multifaceted process, and that multifaceted process is that it's teacher, it's how the student does on assessments, and it's also on the teacher's grades. So what we like to do is we have our fifth grade team, which is our teachers across the district, including our special ed teachers and our general ed teachers, working with the supervisors and the middle school supervisors to determine what is best for the students in their classes. And what we try to do is we try to place students appropriately with the class that is best for them moving on to sixth grade, based on that criteria.
So Exact Math is part of the criteria, and we know that it provides a computer adapted assessment, which is the diagnostic, and it creates an individualized learning path for each student. How is this assessment used to determine placement?
Well, I think the key for Exact Path is that you cannot study for Exact Path. Exact Path actually is an adaptive software. And what does that mean? Is that all students start off with the same type of questions, and then how students respond to those questions. If they are excelling, then they will get more difficult questions. If they are actually struggling, then they'll get easier questions. And what happens is Exact Path will then put those students on a learning path. And that learning path will determine what is best for that student to excel in their mathematic growth as a student and as a mathematician. So there is no studying for Exact Path. People may believe that you might need to study for Exact Path, but what we'd like to see in Exact Path is that students are excelling, that they are surpassing the fifth grade standards, and in this case, the sixth grade standards.
Mr. Stokes, you mentioned there is no study guide, but what would you recommend?
Well, as a parent myself, and I have 4 children of my own, and of course I want my children to do the best to their ability. So what I would recommend to all parents and guardians out there is that you should you go on the state website. We also on our Edison websites, like we list like the standards, and just prepare your students or your children in those standards, but do not try to push them to try to have to skip all sixth grade if they're not ready to do that. We all know what our children are capable of. We all know how we want our children to exceed and succeed, but at the same time, you can help them prepare, but once again, you cannot study for this, but you can expose them to the different material. And if they excel, great. If not, no worries.
Right, so just support them where they are.
Correct.
Is there a limit to how many students are placed in the accelerated program?
Absolutely not. We make sure that students are placed appropriately, so we do not put a limit on the students who can go into those classes, the amount of students that can go into those classes.
Now, what if a parent has concerns about placement? So, for example, if a child is placed in an accelerated class, but the parent does not want them in the accelerated class, what should they do?
So the first point of contact is always going to be for the parent to contact their child's teacher. From there, we can navigate the different avenues and decide what's best for the student in terms of their placement.
What if the child is placed in an academic class, but the child wants to be challenged in an accelerated class? Who should the parent talk to?
So once again, you should always go back to your child's teacher, because a classroom teacher, especially at the elementary level, except for our platooning where they have 2 teachers, for the most part in the elementary school, your child is dealing with one teacher. So therefore, you should go back to your child's classroom teacher if you have any questions.
So we discussed exact path. Can you tell me a little bit more about why the 90th percentile was chosen?
Well, the reason why we chose the 90th percentile is you have to remember that we're a big district. We have 10 elementary schools that feed into our 4 middle schools. So therefore, as we're starting to look at all students, and as Ms. Grimaldi said, we don't have an exact number of students that we choose for different placements or not for several placements. So therefore, the 90th percentile gives us a jumping off point where we can start looking at students that might be capable of handling these more accelerated classes. So, however, that 90th percentile is not set in stone. Like, we like to look at the growth of a student over the year. That's where the teacher input comes into play. But as a district, and as we look at it from a whole, we need to look at a jumping off point, and that 90th percentile is our jumping off point.
So what happens if a child doesn't meet the 90th percentile?
That actually is a very good question. And once again, I think as parents and guardians, like, we want to know what happens if my child does not make that 90th percentile. And what we don't want to be lost in this whole process is that we look at each child individually. Yes, I just mentioned before that as a district our size, we need to have a point where we jump off from, and that's the 90th percentile. But what is important is that we look at each child individually. So there may be some children that are not at the 90th percentile, but they're close and they've shown growth throughout the year. And we see that in our classrooms, and we see that with our curriculum. We know what we're expecting them to do in middle school based on their placement. So what we do is we look at every child. That's why it's a multifaceted process where we have teacher input, assessments, grades, but we don't put a set percentage on all those things because we want to look at each child individually.
So I heard you say 90th percentile, and we keep talking about that, but should I be concerned as a parent if my child is not at the 90th percentile?
Absolutely not. So the 90th percentile is what we use to start looking at students for pre-algebra. Okay, if your child is not the 90th percentile, 1, you should not be concerned your child is at grade level, and 2, it's just our jumping off point. We also look at the whole child. So even if the set 90th percentile is not there, we may look at the child's growth over the year. That's where teacher input really is important here. We also look at grades, we look at other assessments throughout the year to determine whether this child can handle the pre-algebra class or not. However, just to reiterate, you should not be worried at all if your child is at the 90th percentile because that child is at grade level.
Is there a place we can go to look at the child's diagnostic results?
Absolutely. So all you need to do is just go into your child's Edmentum account, and Edmentum is a parent company for ExactPath, and in there you can see where your child is, how they've done on their diagnostics, and how they're doing on their learning paths.
And to add to that, one thing that's really great about it is that we take a look at each individual student. So we're able to see exactly in each domain where the students are and what grade level they're performing at. So if they are exhibiting those skills to surpass 6th grade math, then that's a great indication. But we can also see and make sure that they are on track to be on grade level in their 5th grade standards.
So is the student's placement permanent?
So we do re-examine placement at the end of every school year. We want to make sure our students are appropriately placed and that they're going to be in a course that they can find success in. So at the end of each school year, we do revisit and relook at all of their placements again.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes and Ms. Grimaldi. It's apparent that teachers and supervisors really want what's best for each student.
100%. We always try to do what's best for our students.
And just always remember, we put students' best interests in our minds, and we continue to collaborate as an elementary and middle school cohort.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Ms. Dunn and Ms. Ellerman. Thanks for speaking with us today.
Of course, we want to make sure that parents have all the information they need as we move forward in this process.
Ms. Grimaldi and Mr. Stokes provided us with a lot of helpful information regarding student placement in math. Is the process similar in language arts?
Yes, it is.
What about the 6th grade language arts classes? What's the difference between the levels?
Well, Marissa, it is one course. So they are all addressing 6th grade, or both levels are addressing 6th grade standards. The difference is in pacing of the course, the level of support that students require to understand the course material, It's also in the tasks and the level of independence that students have. And finally, it's just that deeper thinking that we require, that problem solving that they could do independently.
Is the placement criteria available for parents to see?
It's been on the website since October.
How will parents and students be notified of their sixth grade placement?
So at the end of May, through the Genesis portal, parents will be able to see the recommendations and the electives. However, we really need to keep in mind that there are still many more months of instruction, and we want to make sure that we place the students in the appropriate level so that they can have the best success.
Is there anything that parents or students should be doing before the student placements are released?
I think what Ms. Grimaldi and Mr. Stokes had said before, continue to work with your child on the things that they are working on in school. So you can just reinforce those skills to have them succeed.
Is there anything else that parents should know at this time?
Yes, one of the things that, first and foremost, that if they have any questions about this process, about placement process, they should reach out to any one of us and we'll be happy to answer their questions. That's first and foremost. But the second thing is that every year we examine student placement. So we look at student progress every year to make sure that the students are appropriately placed.
But we want to also remember that while we want that open communication between teacher and parent, that the teachers right now at this time cannot answer any specific questions about placement because, as we said before, we still have quite a few months of instruction and we want to make sure that they're placed appropriately.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Ellerman and Ms. Dunn. That was very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.